Hello and welcome. I'm Jedite83. Welcome to my Pagan vlog. My website, wiccan.pw, is the home of my online Book of Shadows, along with a blog mostly covering these videos. And speaking of Book of Shadows, that's what we're going to talk about briefly. I was asked the question by Des, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, about the role of the Book of Shadows. This is a new practitioner to Wicca, and one of the pieces of advice I have mentioned, I know I've mentioned on this channel before, is a skill you want to be able to learn early on is note-taking. And one of the reasons for the note-taking is as you learn, you're going to have a lot of stuff, and you're going to want to build up your notebook so you can have your own source instead of having to go to numerous websites and numerous books. You want to bring all the stuff that works for you into one place, your notes. And eventually you will put all this into a single book, your Book of Shadows. I shouldn't actually call it a single book because I do know some pagans who have book after book after book. Their Books of Shadows are just so many volumes. And that's just how it is. What is the role of the Book of Shadows? It's, well, exactly as I described. It is where you take everything that you think you need to know as a Wiccan, as a witch, and bring it into one place. When I initially answered this question for Des, I described it as a personal Bible, and I don't know if that's the best wording for it, but I do stand with it because it's the best wording I can come up with. Each one of us, let me say it this way, Wicca, and I speak of Wicca because that's the path that I follow, does not have a central holy book like the big book religions of Christianity, Judaism, Islam. We don't. We have some writings such as the Evangelos, such as the Wiccan Read, that are very influential and very important, but I don't know I would consider them a holy text. We also have pagan authors like Scott Cunningham, like Raymond Buckland. Sorry, I can't think of that name for a second. Cunningham, Buckland, and others whose writings are, again, very influential, very important, to the point of being almost a cornerstone of what modern Wicca and the Wiccan interpretation of witchcraft is. I don't know if I would personally consider them to be a Bible or a sacred text. And like everything else in Wicca, your mileage may vary. There are some people who may consider these sacred texts, not me personally. Your Book of Shadows, however, will be... I know for me personally, my Book of Shadows is a sacred text. It is how I walk this path. It is how I practice Wicca. It's how I practice witchcraft. It's how, and I'm working on some other sections on other esoteric and occult topics. It is how I do this. I can hand this to you and say, here's how I do things, and you can get an insight into my practice. Oh, mine's also online and freely available for anyone to read, which is not a very common thing. A lot of, traditionally and even today, a lot of people do keep their Book of Shadows private. No one's allowed to touch it, no one's allowed to read it. There are some who say that on death, a witch's Book of Shadows should be burned or otherwise destroyed. I subscribe to the Latin, one of my personal mottos is the Latin phrase "Actendo dictemus," which means by teaching we learn. So I believe that, one, I get better as a student by writing and teaching. And this is how I do it. what form of a Book of Shadows you have is entirely up to you. But I do say start taking notes and start building your Book of Shadows. You so I started with a composition notebook. You know, those black and white marble cover composition notebooks. At some point, I moved from that to wiki software, MediaWiki. MediaWiki? Yeah, but that's it. It's the same software that runs sites like Wikipedia. I moved to WordPress. I moved to, I believe I used DocuWiki for a little while. I know I use DocuWiki for a few other projects. I think that's one. And I'm currently running it on back on WordPress, which is a blogging software. Some people hole punch it and use a 3-ring binder. Some don't hole punch it, use those little plastic sleeves. You put it in, you put that in your 3-ring binder. Some people will get fancy leather cover bound blank books and handwrite it in those. The form it takes, be it digital, be it a 3-ring binder or a school notebook or some fancy expensive tome, or type it up on your computer in something like Notepad and have it professionally bound by an actual book printer. It's up to you, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you take notes and you build your Book of Shadows, and you build it into a resource that works for you. Like if you go to my Book of Shadows, I do try to make the articles accessible and usable to other people. But there are some articles that make sense to me, and probably only to me, because that is the important part. Sharing it is something I like to do, but it is still a secondary mission. At the end of the day, it is meant to be a resource that I use to help me remember everything I need to remember, and to help me further my personal practice. Another thing a lot of people do is they will actually use their Book of Shadows as an altar tool. I believe I mentioned this during my altar tool, my series on altar tools. If you do put it on the altar, usually you have a space right in front of you, your working area. Your Book of Shadows could usually go immediately to the left. That's at least where I put it. I believe that's where it goes traditionally. And the reason for it is, since most of us are right-handed, we're doing stuff with our right hand, putting it on the left keeps it out of the way. For me, since mine is digital, I pull up anything I need on my cell phone, but I do have a USB thumb drive on my altar hanging on a hook in the back, which has a backup of the entire code base and database for my Book of Shadows and several other of my Pagan projects. So it is a part of it. And it is my backup, so if anything grabs the live copy on my server, I have a backup. Although it's not as up to date as it should be, but it's not the easiest thing to back those up. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about a Book of Shadows. But if you're new to the craft, if you're a new practitioner, start early. I think when I was starting out, and even after 20 years, I still consider myself new. I probably always will. It's just how my brain works. But when I was very first starting out, it was so invaluable because I hadn't memorized this stuff yet. There's still a lot of stuff I haven't memorized. I don't have huge charts of candle colors and what day of the weeks mean what. I have notes and I have resources I have to reference, and eventually these things will get put in my Book of Shadows, so all this stuff is there, so I don't have to fill up my brain with that stuff. I can fill up with stuff I have put a higher priority on. Again, this is how I work. Your mileage may vary. I think that's all I can think of right now to say about Books of Shadows, but start it as early as you can. It'll be the most valuable for you then. I'm Jedite83. go ahead and thumbs this video up if it helps you out, and subscribe to my channel, helps me out. I think I've mentioned the website already. But no, I have. And until next time, may you blessed be.